Hey, today's topic is going to be about soO and ST. And this is a player comparison I haven't seen anybody else do, but I think it's actually very relevant because, as far as I can see, their strengths as players are similar, except that soO was everything Nestea wished he could have become. And that's a very interesting sort of dynamic just because Nestea was at the very beginning of StarCraft 2. And you would think like his strategies and ideas are irrelevant now, but soO like he didn't take those ideas. I'm pretty sure he came up through them like through his own like creation, but they do mirror and resemble what Nestea probably thought about the game. And so I'll give a brief summary of what I think is Zerg history. So Zerg history goes like this: Nestea was the best, and he did it through the larvae mechanic. Um, that's like a one way to explain it. After that comes life, and life changes the tactical way everybody plays. And then also at the same time, you have to give Stefano a nod just for the Broodlord Infestor shit. Beyond that, in 2013 we have Sulky, who's the best, and he's generally he doesn't do anything revolutionary, so to speak, but he's very smart, very calculated, great decisions, and just a generally overall good player. Like there's actually no reason for him to retire, but except for his own like burnout. soO is a player. I think he did push the edges of what Zerg thought they could be to a place where they couldn't believe. I guess that's how I'd say it, because he basically takes this model that ST does, or I guess he accidentally recreates this model that ST does, and then he pushes it to a point where like it's not even like the same thing. It's more like he made this idea that people thought was dead and irrelevant, and then he made it like the forefront of Zerg thought for a bit. And then beyond that, of course, you go into the era of the Kongs, Beal, Dark, soO. But that's a brief summary of Zerg history, Zerg thought. And now I'll go specifically into Nestea and soO as players. So Nestea is a player, I think, we consider him smart. Like, I remember there's like a clip where basically he's like Artosis calls him like a fucking genius, and it's during the time he like does a Spinecrawler rush against any pro, and that was a genius move. But basically, even though we call him smart, I've never considered Nestea a macro game player. And what I mean by that is he's good all the way up until the early late game. And then after the early late game, he literally falls asleep. You can see this in a bunch of his games in 2012, and then at the BlizzCon finals in 2011. Like, that throw was so bad that people legitimately thought that was like a match fix. As it turned out, it might have been, but given the fact that he continually and consistently did this throughout the rest of his career, it's hard for me to say it was, because it's like a repeatable pattern from him. So what is it about Nestea that I think was so good? Like I said, he understood the larvae mechanic the most, so he understood, and on top of that, you combine that with the fact that he was great at scouting and at reading the game. So he could defeat all the all-ins that were coming to him by like managing the economy, managing the larva, managing the drones, managing how many units to get. That's like where he gets his first nickname, Detective Zerg. The second bit is the fact that because he understands the larva mechanic, he understands how to like overwhelm players with the Zergling Muta Baneling micro, or not micro, but unit composition. And this is how he gets most of his versus Terran wins throughout 2011. Specifically, the most famous is against SC2, but that's another famous one would be like his close loss against Top. But beyond that, it's very it's very surprising, because it's not like Nestea had great micro or anything. It's just that he understood the game at a better level than the rest of the Zergs during the time. And then you add that to the fact that he used a lot of cheeses, like I explained earlier, the Any Pro one, where basically Any Pro's entire strategy was based off of forge openings. But because of the way the maps worked out, you could always Spinecrawler rush every forge opening and hit the Nexus. So all Nestea does just use this once, and then Any Pro just gives up. Like, he's like, oh fuck it, I'm not going to do anything I practiced, and then he loses the game because he goes to like a gate opening he's clearly not practiced it with. And that's kind of Nestea in a nutshell. And Nestea wins 3 GSLs, one against Marine King, one against Lucira, and one against Inca. Fucking Inca. So that's kind of a summary of Nestea. And how does this compare to soO? soO is actually, his ideas are very similar, except he's better at them than Nestea is. What I mean by that is Nestea understood the game and during a time where nobody else really understood the game. By the time you get into soO's era, everybody understands what Nestea was trying to do, and everybody understands that Nestea, or everybody believed they understood that Nestea was wrong. And basically, the reason we think Nestea was wrong was because of the speed in which you can max out in StarCraft 2. So what would happen is Nestea would be the guy to get to 90 drones, and then he'd try to trade you. But as it turned out, like that style was too inefficient. Like it worked back when like the refinements weren't there for the economy, when the maps were a bit worse, like smaller, and it's harder to get that money flowing. It worked back then, but it no longer worked now. This is the 2013 period. But what soO does is he figures it out. Like he balances the drones better. He hits the injects way better than everybody else. So even though everybody has the same, every other Zerg has the same resources as soO. soO is the guy who's getting more out of his work because he's the guy who's getting more injects. And this is a critical point in HOTS as compared to LOTV, just because of how the unit compositions work, so that it's much more important in that game as compared to the later expansion where it's much less emphasized. And so soO takes this model, or he creates this model for Zone, and he pushes it to the max. And what he does is he's very much more clever about the meta timing, because in the old days of 2011, the basic idea was you save up a thousand right as the meta spire pops up, and then you make 10 meters at once, and then that's how you instantly take control of the map. What soO does, he's like, okay, that's a nice timing, but it's too sharp. And what I mean by too sharp is you can die instantly if you fuck it up. So what soO does is he's like, okay, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'll build the spire on normal timing, but instead I'll make Lings and Banelings, and this will also get me more drones with that extra money. And then I'll only make 1 or 2 metas. And then the 1 or 2 metas isn't to take map scroll. It's just deal with any drops that come my way. And then I'll add 1 or 2 more. Then I'll add 1 or 2 more, and then I'll eventually get to the 10. And yeah, you don't get the instant map control as you do if you just go for the instant 10. But you get a better economy. You get better. You get more army on the field, and you get the benefit of the fact that they're attacking into you, and you get less damage overall. And that's kind of how soO played that game, and that's why he's able to overwhelm so many different Terran players during the 2014 era. Specifically, the one I'm thinking of is against Flash, when right after Flash had gone to that Pro League streak, he had won in Toronto, and then he had come back, and everybody was thinking he was the best Terran in the world, and then he got smashed by soO in an arena that was Flash's, at that point, best point of the game, and he just got fucking smashed. Like, soO went down 30 drones, and soO still smashed Flash. It was absolutely amazing, and it showed and the reason this is even more amazing is because the second best Zerg at the time, Solar, had played Flash only 1 or 2 weeks before that, and he got fucking smashed by Flash. And it just showed the amount of difference that soO could make just off of his mechanics, off of his understanding of economy alone. And that's why I consider him a better version of Nestea in that aspect. And then the difference between Nestea and soO, though, is that soO eventually learns. He evolves. So after losing the first 3 GSLs and the Kespa Cup to Zest, soO realizes that his style alone isn't enough. And yeah, he's amazing at it, but it's clearly not getting him the wins. And what he does is he adapts and changes his game a little bit. So he adds in scouting and preparation, and he's among the better StarCraft 2 players in history to do this. And this culminates in his semifinals rematch against Zest. Zest was a guy who had beaten in that GSL finals, and they beat him at Keswick Cup. And it's clear that if they had both run their standard styles, Zest would win again. But soO wasn't interested in that. soO instead pulled out a bunch of builds and a series of strategies that like completely bamboozled Zest, and he wins that series and gets to the finals. And that's a moment where I thought this soO guy is the real shit. He's the real deal, because there are very few players who can both lose a finals, look at their flaws, and then figure out a way to better themselves. And that's what soO did. Of course, he loses that finals anyway, but that's a different story. So so he gains that aspect that Nestea had of the all-ins, except I think soO is better at it than Nestea. And finally, in this recent BlizzCon run, throughout 2017, and I'd actually say throughout 2015 as well, there's these periods of meta where Terran is the better late game race, and what I mean by that is they have mech, and so in order to defeat mech, you have to be super patient, you have to be super grindy. It's like a very grindy sort of matchup at the very end, and it takes a lot of mental strain out of you. And this was something that soO wasn't interested in before, and then this is why he wasn't. This is like one of the reasons why he wasn't that good in 2015. There's a few other reasons you can point to, and this is why I believe he lost to Gumiho in 2017 in that GSL finals, was because he wasn't willing to learn or adapt to that style, and he thought he could kill it before it got him, but it didn't work. And what's amazing is he plays against Gumiho at this BlizzCon 2016. And they run the same thing, but this time soO shows a much better understanding of how to deal with this late game mech. I will say, LOTV gives more options and tools compared to HOTS, so it's a bit different. But it's clearly an evolution of thought and an evolution of gameplay that soO has brought to his game, and that's something that Nestea has never been able to do, and that's something I consider amazing from soO. But again, he loses. So I'm bringing all of this up just because I think it's kind of a fitting sort of parallel to understand soO and Nestea, because here's the thing about the two of them. I think undoubtedly at this point, nobody will say Nestea was a better player than soO. I don't think that's possible, but here's the thing about Nestea and soO. Nestea has won 3 GSL finals. Granted, they were in an easier time. soO has gone to 6 GSL finals. He has lost all of them. And this is despite the fact that I think soO has done things that Nestea was never able to do. He evolved his game. He made himself better. He fought back from the hole. He dragged himself out of the fucking hole that he was in multiple times. And every time he loses the finals. And it really makes you think as to the importance of trophy wins, just because soO has been to double the amount of GSL finals Nestea has. soO is undoubtedly a much more skilled player, but Nestea has the victories, right? And it makes you wonder exactly like how important being clutch is as compared to how important being the better player is, if you get what I mean. Just because if you think victory is all that matters, like it'd be harder for you to say Nestea is worse than soO just because Nestea has the titles. But if you look at the context of who they played and what they did, it's incomparable. soO is a better player by far than Nestea ever was. So those are just my thoughts, and it's a interesting parallel between soO and Nestea, and thought I'd bring it up. See you later.